I recently went thrifting for art supplies, no surprise here, and I ended up finding something very special. Something that led to my creating a beautiful piece of artwork, if I do say so myself. And I don't describe my art this way very often. Normally, it's something along the lines of, yeah, it's pretty mediocre, but hey, it resembles a person, and that's a win. But this might very well be one of my favorite pieces of art so far. Whoa, what a weird thing to say. Hello, bonjour, hola. My name is Juli Rox. I'm an amateur artist from good old Vancouver, Canada. And I really love making art videos here on YouTube. I enjoy talking about art subjects, some related to pursuing an art hobby as an adult, or as I like to phrase it, the highs and lows of art and life. I also like exploring with DIY art supplies and thrifting for art supplies. While I have accumulated many new art supplies over my 8 years of learning art and counting, most of the new supplies I brought in as of recent years are indeed secondhand. Think thrift stores, alternative art shops, and good old Facebook Marketplace. I have videos on all three, FYI. And of course, there's the option of Frankensteining some supplies together, DIY style. You can make your own inks out of fruit, leaves, bark, tea, anything that leaves behind some sort of color. And you could pretty much do it for free. During my most recent thrifting adventure, I came across a bunch of really neat items, including car enamel paint, very interesting, a teeny tiny watercolor set, a portable en plein air easel, a carry-all art bag, which I did actually consider buying, if only the pattern was less grandmotherly. But the main item I'd like to showcase in this video is this vintage Strathmore watercolor pad. How freaking cool! I've come across vintage colored pencils, acrylic paints, watercolors, oil paint, chalk, and oil pastels, but I've never come across a vintage artist paper pad. That's just so neat! And even cooler, I found a vintage pad of colored charcoal paper at the same thrift store just a couple weeks later. What's so great about this watercolor pad, you may be wondering? Well, aside from being super old, it also has someone's old landscape artwork in it, mostly done via oil pastel. But there was also a watercolor piece in there. You're being a little bit disrespectful. This is why our blinds keep breaking. I can't lift them up anymore because he has entirely destroyed them. I'll show you. I'll show you what I mean. This is what having a cat has done. Oh, there it is. See, one side's up, one side's down. That's what you did, Oliver. Ruined my blinds. At first I was thinking of drawing in my typical style, but this time around I want to do something a little more artsy, a little less cartoony. I don't know if that's how it's gonna turn out, but I guess we'll find out. Basically, it's a woman holding a plant that's covering her face. I've seen a lot of photos of people holding flowers and hiding their faces. I thought it would be cool to have someone actually carrying a potted plant. A reason why I wanted to draw this is because I see a lot of greens, blues, and yellows, and I think it would be cool to use some of this art here to cut out leaves in different textures and colors because we have a lot of natural colors. Like, look how beautiful this is. First, I'm going to start off with watercolors, my beloved Mei Liang set, and then once I'm happy with it, I'll go ahead and I'll cut up the different elements to make a proper collage piece for the plant here. We'll see how it turns out, and we'll see how this paper works too. I truly have no idea what it's going to be like. And in terms of working with vintage supplies, here I have my Supracolor 2, there it is, Supracolor 2 soft Caran d'Ache watercolor pencils that I found during my thrifting adventures, and I did actually post as part of one of my thrift hauls. So if any of you are interested in my thrifting for art supply videos, I have a few and counting. I'm always on the hunt for vintage art supplies, and whenever I go thrifting, if I see anything, I film it. And that doesn't mean I take it home with me. Most items I do not take home with me, since I'm trying to do this thing where I actually bring home items that I'll truly use, but sometimes I find something special and I just end up taking it home anyways. Call it a lack of self-control, but I always say buying secondhand is always better than buying brand new. The reason why I love vintage art supplies is because they have a story. And I think the story of this paper pad is one of the more special ones I've come across. And since I was greeted with a half-full sketchbook, I racked my brain for ideas of how to incorporate this artwork into my own art. I thought that maybe I could make bookmarks out of them, but I wanted to do something a little bit more creatively challenging. Not that bookmarks can't be, but I wanted this art piece to involve my favorite subject to paint: people, specifically cute girls or the occasional portrait. Looking at the art that was available to me, the greens and blues were absolutely beautiful. I loved the texture that the oil pastels left behind and thought that maybe it would be interesting to play around with the art of collage. Stay with me, specifically watercolor and collage, and gouache and colored pencils. So this turned into a bit of a mixed media piece, but I'll have you know, I have zero regrets. Now, I'm not an art supply purist, but if I'm being honest, I do actually associate bringing in different mediums, when originally unintended, as a way to cover up my mistakes. A last-ditched effort, if you will. My values aren't defined enough? Bring out the white gouache or gel pen to recoup some of that white space. You can't tell where my person's chin ends and neck begins? Hello, black fine liner. Want to deepen some shadows but afraid you'll ruin a piece with your amateur watercolor skills? Well, colored pencils, we meet again. But for the first time in a long time, I actually went into this piece with a plan to use any and all mediums I deemed necessary during the process. It led to a fairly chaotic art piece that did manage to come together in the end. In fact, I was striving for chaos. My vision was a watercolor painted woman holding a plant pot with a mess of leaves coming out in all shapes and sizes and directions. A botanical vomit of sorts. I was inspired loosely by artist Marugata's. Her playful, whimsical, and colorful style, her way of incorporating different shapes, and her clear, go-with-the-flow kind of approach spoke to me in such a deep and mesmerizing way. I just couldn't help but try to embody some of that sparkle. The colors just chose themselves. I barely put thought into it. I just knew I wanted the woman to be warm in tone, to have the cool greens and blues of the plants stand out even more. I know this looks a bit ridiculous, but I have a vision. It'll come together. Just trust me, okay? Trust me. When I was finished cutting and pasting different leaves and shapes onto my art piece, it just wasn't hectic enough. Like a mad scientist, or a mad artist, I suppose. I wanted more. More busy, more chaos, more botanical vomit. So I dug through my craft bin of shame. Do not tell me that as an artist you don't have one of these, okay? Piles of supplies and materials from past arty phases that fizzled out as quickly as they smacked you in the first place. So from this art bin of shame, I pulled out some dried flowers and leaves from the short-lived resin art days, and I just glued them on wherever I felt needed a bit more of that oomph. The result? A woman holding a crazy wild plant that surpasses the borders of a sketchbook page, as if the art was spilling out into reality. How symbolic. I sent my best friend a photo of this masterpiece and cut her out. Yep, according to him, whose qualifications include nearly zero art experience, yet a pair of working eyes, said that it would look better without the white. Great. permission to do what I originally planned to do, but was too nervous to, because why mess with a good thing? I pulled her out of her frame and with my handy razor blade, cut her out of the page. I cut some more white space in between the plants and added more leaves, but something still didn't feel right. Onto my box of scrapbook goodies. Yet another art phase coming on. What I found was a vibrant, busy background with pinks, oranges, and golds. Beautiful. This was it. This was truly my original vision come to life. It became even busier, but it just somehow worked. So I slept, woke up the next morning, stared at the beautiful monstrosity hanging on my wall, and yet again made a few more changes. Added even more leaves and incorporated some of the leftover scrapbook paper into the bouquet just to tie it all together. Finally, for what was probably the 7th time, I put her back in her frame, and voila, this faceless woman now lives on my wall. The shapes, textures, colors, and dimensions scream busy yet fun and playful. It's everything I could have wanted from an art piece. And despite doing this whole art thing for quite a few years now, it's actually the first piece of art that I have up on my wall created by me since coming back from Korea over a year and a half ago. I just haven't created anything I loved enough to put on display since then. And you know what? The paper actually held up so well, I didn't even notice it. I forgot I was working with a vintage watercolor pad because it just felt so normal and natural. We're gonna take a break from this. Forgive the birds in the background, they're back in my room. My sister had them for a while, but she went on a trip, so now they're back. I'm very excited about this. So this is the first time I've received an email from a company that I actually... The birds, I'm sorry. I'm trying to film. Oh my god, I'm so excited! Y'all! Does this make me like a proper influencer? I can't believe this. And I did make it clear that when I do review products on my channel, which lately it's been mostly vintage items, but when I do review them, I am very honest. That's something that I didn't want to compromise on. And the point person who I've been in communication with, she told me that is totally fine. Give an honest review. She didn't even ask for a review specifically. She just asked that I feature them in a video. But of course, if I'm using a product that I haven't used ever, I'm gonna share my thoughts of how they work. So this is number 1, SimTap acrylic marker set, and number 2. So here they are in all of their glory. Stay tuned for a proper video on these guys. This pad is part of Strathmore's 400 series, which is one of their higher quality lines. Although I can't say I've worked with Strathmore watercolor paper in the past, so I truly can't tell you how it compares to modern day Strathmore. It definitely didn't feel like working with cotton watercolor paper, but it held up quite well. The paper is very absorbent, it hardly buckled after the piece was completely dry. Granted, I'm no expert when it comes to watercolor paper. In fact, I mostly work in my Canson mixed media sketchbook, which can't handle water as well as proper watercolor paper. Although I've worked with Canson XL watercolor paper, I must say that I much prefer this vintage Strathmore watercolor pad. If you tried modern day Strathmore 400 series watercolor paper, please tell me how you like it because I might actually consider it when I'm in need of a new sketchbook. Now for the golden question. What year is this paper pad from? As usual, it took a good amount of internet sleuthing, but I was actually able to pinpoint the decade a lot easier than some other vintage art supplies I've come across. Firstly, current Strathmore pads have a few specifics included on their packaging. For one, they have a website listed underneath the barcode, strathmoreartist.com. They also have, quote, a division of Packon Corporation, unquote, and that Mohawk Fine Paper Inc. owns the trademark license. On the history page of the Strathmore website, Mohawk Paper purchased Strathmore in 2004, and Packon Corporation purchased the Strathmore Artist Papers trademark in 2006. So we know that the vintage paper pad is younger than this. That puts it at about 20 years old minimum. Now, the website, strathmoreartist.com, was registered as a domain in 1998, so that's 27 years old minimum. But an older iteration of Strathmore paper pads includes a different website on its packaging, strathmore.com, registered in 1995, raising our minimum to 30 years old. Because here's the thing, none of this information is present on the pad that I own. So it's safe to assume that it predated these corporate buyouts and website launches. And honestly, just by looking at the style and design of the pad, along with the yellowing pages, I think it's safe to say that it matches the pre-1995 date that we're slapping onto it. Now, according to Strathmore's history page, the 400 and 500 series paper pads were first developed in 1974. Since the pad we're working with is part of the 400 series line, we know that it's not older than this. That means we're now looking at anywhere between 1974 to 1995. That's still quite a wide gap. Seeing the first designs of Strathmore paper pads on an ad from the 70s, aka when the 400 series was first introduced, this is what they looked like. As you can tell, the pad in this video looks quite different, so we know that it wasn't part of their first rollout. Through my online research, I found another Strathmore pad from 1999. On this pad, tiny blurry text says that Strathmore is a trademark of the International Paper Company, something missing from the pad that I own. Okay, these are all my leaves so far. I'm a little bit nervous about this. The International Paper logo is even printed on the cover. And going back onto Strathmore's timeline, International Paper purchased the company in 1986. So that narrows us down to approximately the 10 years before 1986. With all of this information, I'm comfortable with saying that this watercolor paper is from the 1980s. Hence over 40 years old. This definitely took me down a few rabbit holes, but normally I'm met with dead end after dead end. So I'm just glad we were able to narrow it down so much. And it is very cool to be working with paper that's so old. Not only that, but being able to work with art that might be equally as old. And based on this information, the second Strathmore charcoal pad I found at the same thrift store is also a 400 series pad and could also fall within the same 10 years following the parameters explained above. I wonder if these were donated by the same person, or maybe it's just a coincidence finding these two pads within such a short time frame. What do you guys think? Now, there is a matter I'd like to bring up, because I know some folks might be bothered by this. Yes, I mutilated someone's beautiful artwork. Personally, I'm not precious with my work. I will give things away left and right, cover things up, toss things out, because I know that if I really want to, I could probably recreate any piece of artwork I've made in the past, and I know it might not be exactly the same, but it'll be close enough, or maybe even better considering how much time has passed. These pieces of artwork were not removed from their pad. They weren't framed, they lived in the sketchbook. Sketchbooks are made for practice. This could have been someone's practice pieces that never saw the light of day. And of course, someone donated this book, so clearly the pieces weren't sentimental enough for them to keep. Also, I bought this watercolor pad for a whopping $3 Canadian. The reason why I enjoy vintage art supplies is because they are one of a kind. They have a story, they're so much more meaningful to use compared to brand new supplies. And that's the thing, I don't buy vintage supplies to put in a display cabinet. I toss them in my art drawers, intermixed with all of my other supplies, and I reach for them as I do my regular store-bought items. While it feels more special to use them, I'm not necessarily careful or precious with them. I've said this a bunch of times, and I will say it a bunch more. Art supplies are meant to be used. While it was really fun working with this aged watercolor paper, especially because je suis une watercolor girly, what made this piece even more special was incorporating another artist's artwork into my piece and turning it into something new. Not better, but new and different and more me. While I didn't know who created these landscape pieces and will likely never meet them, it did feel like an artist collaboration of sorts. It's why I really ended up falling in love with the end result. It's truly so much more meaningful knowing that I worked with someone else's art to create this piece. And not only that, but the colors and textures used in the original art pieces is what inspired this idea in the first place. And had this watercolor pad not been full of someone else's artwork, I'd probably end up with yet another cute girl drawing, which I do love my cute girl drawings, but I also love trying new things and being inspired and pushing my creative boundaries. I mean, who doesn't? Okay, that was a false alarm. I already framed it and everything. It was missing something, and I think what it's missing are some real flowers. But I don't know how this will show on the frame. So I need to figure out how they'll look. I also like to believe that whoever donated this pad wanted their art to be seen by someone, to have someone appreciate it and be inspired by it. Otherwise, why leave it in the art book? I know when I donate old sketchbooks and notebooks, I rip out the old pieces so the next person can start fresh. But maybe the previous owner didn't have the heart to remove these. Okay, here she is for real. It is getting dark. I wonder if I'll add more to her in the future. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you prefer her in white or completely cut out. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve this piece. I'm not sure if I will. I feel like I'm kind of done with it. Ready to move on with my life. But if you do have any ideas, please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and until next time, stay creative. Peace. Thoughts? Okay, I have filmed this outro like 4 times. Am I gonna take her out of the frame again? I just feel like she's missing something. And I really like this background. Oh gosh. Okay, I'll be right back. Whatever the situation, I truly believe that the majority of artists would be happy to see their old art being given a new life in some capacity. And that's how I see vintage supplies as well. I love that I could give a previously unwanted item a new chance of fulfilling its purpose, whether it be being used, being admired, evoking inspiration, and/or being appreciated. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. What would you do if you found a sketchbook with someone's old artwork? Do you think my chopping it up is entirely disrespectful? Dun dun. Do you think I took beautiful artwork and made it worse, or do you like the final piece? And finally, there are a few more pieces of original artwork left in the sketchbook. What do you think I should do with them? Let me know if you have any creative ideas. And finally, if you are in the greater Vancouver area as well, let me know what your favorite thrift shops are. Do you know of any that have a proper art and craft section? Any specific store you want me to check out? Please do let me know. I'm always down to explore a new thrift shop. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, like, comment, subscribe, or just have a cup of joe and carry on. Until next time, stay creative and happy thrifting. Author's note, I have a few different videos in the works. First off, I ordered some 100-year-old Polish paints off of Etsy. Essentially, crates of watercolor cakes were hidden away in someone's attic during the Second World War. An artist purchased them, and she's been repackaging them and selling them off ever since. Very cool, and definitely the oldest art supply I've ever worked with, so stay tuned. A shout out from the last video I posted on the 60-year-old Grambacher paints I found at a different thrift store. Madame at Lilalu101, hopefully I pronounced that right. Quote, apparently we summon Google super similarly because you triggered mine. Guess we are kindred spirits. Unquote. I love a kindred spirit as much as the next guy, so thank you, Lilalu, for watching and leaving a very kind comment. And also, since you seem to enjoy thrifted art supply videos, I really hope that this one popped up on your feed as well and that you managed to watch it and enjoy it. To everyone else, thank you so much for watching, as always. I truly, truly appreciate it, and I am having a lot of fun here on YouTube. Have a beautiful day, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!